I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to share some tips with you, some of my favorite tips for helping your kindergartners learn to work independently. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and do that now, and then also hit the little bell so that you're notified every time I post a brand new video about teaching in K2. Okay, so let's talk kindergartners and independence at the beginning of the school year. Kindergarten is my absolute favorite grade level. They are so sweet, and it is just the most amazing experience to see how they grow throughout the year, especially in their literacy skills. However, the beginning of the school year is so stressful and so tiring sometimes because, at least in my experience, many of my kids come and they're not super independent and school is maybe scary, but really it totally depends what kind of class you have and what your students' prior experiences have been, right? Because some of your kids may have attended like a more of a formal school setting already. Like maybe they were in pre-K in your school, maybe they had like junior kindergarten or K4. So they may be used to a high level of structure already. Some may have attended like an at-home daycare or like a other like preschool or daycare experience. And then some have never even been to school or a daycare setting at all. They may have stayed home with a parent. And so this is their first experience in school. So you may have some of those kids or a mix of those kids. It really just depends on your class. Now, at the beginning of kindergarten, developmentally, we try to push so much on them academically, I feel like in the kindergarten year now. But at the same time, like kids at that age, they're really just working on learning how to manage themselves, how to engage with other students appropriately, social skills, really some of those basic things of just being a human being, right? And you may find that some of your kids can play independently, but actually completing work independently is another thing. Now, working independently, of course, is what we want to get them to do eventually. Play is super important, and I always do incorporate play when I'm teaching kindergarten, especially at the beginning of the school year. And we also want to work toward at least some level of independent work skills because as eventually, I don't do this at the beginning of the year, but as you're pulling your literacy small groups or even math small groups eventually, you want them to be able to work and practice skills with some level of independence. So, it's definitely something that we need to build toward. And of course, it's going to take time. So before I dive into my tips, I would really love to hear from you in the comments. Have you found in your experience that your kindergarten students are able to work independently fairly early on in the school year? Let me know in the comments. Just, you can say like yes, no, sort of, or it depends. And you can feel free to share more details. I'm just curious because I feel like throughout the country, throughout the world even, kids just come in having had such diverse experiences. So I'm curious what your experience has been with your kids' independent work skills. Okay, so now let's get into these tips. And what I'm sharing here is stuff that you're not going to be doing like instantly when your kids come in at the beginning of the school year. These are the things that I start working toward once they're feeling safe, once we're, have developed some sense of classroom community, after we've kind of like laid the groundwork with procedures, expectations, rules, then I start gradually working toward getting them to work independently. And it's actually like a 4 to 6 week process, sometimes even longer. And in these tips, I'm going to share kind of what I'm doing as I'm working them to get up to this point. So the first thing that I always focus on is model, model, model. And I know that you probably model already, right? But, modeling is when you're doing something, you're speaking aloud about what you're doing and why. Oh, I am closing my scissors after I'm done, and I'm going to hold them like this, and I'm going to put them away safely in this box, right? Like showing them, but also telling them. And when it comes to independent work, you want to have visualized beforehand, like, okay, when my students are working independently, this is what I want that to look like. I prefer to like write it down literally, like where are they sitting and working? What materials are they using? What should they do if they need help or they want to ask a question? Maybe you have like an aide they can ask, or maybe they should ask a partner. When is it okay to interrupt you? Because eventually you'll be doing small group work. And So think through all of that stuff in a lot of detail, even down to like the littlest things, like what if a friend is bothering you? What should you do? Just kind of think through all the different scenarios that could arise and like your expectations for them as they're working independently. So once you have that in mind, then you can model. Actually go and sit wherever you want them to be sitting. Show them. Sit like a kindergartner. Show them what you're doing, right? You can also model or have a student model like the wrong way to do it. But if you do that, model the right way first, then have the modeling of the wrong way, and then model the right way again. You also want to get kids practicing too. So at the beginning of the school year, I am choosing one by one different tasks that I want them to eventually be able to do on their own as a center. And so one of those might be really simple, like an alphabet puzzle. And so I will model like how to do it appropriately, talk through it with them. And then I also want to give them a chance to practice as well. So just like I would teach any skill, like counting or an alphabet letter, I'm going to model and then I'm going to provide guided practice. So they actually get to practice before we get to with my help, before we get to the point where I'm like, okay, go do this on your own, right? So it's like gradual release of responsibility, but instead of an academic skill, it's an independent work skill, okay? So that, I think that's like one big step, right? The modeling, breaking it down, figuring out what you want this to eventually look like, and then taking baby steps and guiding them until you get to that point. My next tip is to really think about how to make your classroom and your learning space conducive to independent work. And when I say independent work, it could be that they're working solo, but it could also be that they're working with a partner. That takes some time for them to be able to productively work with a partner, right? But that's also good opportunity for building social skills and oral language. So that is something that I want them to do. Now, if I'm thinking about my classroom, right, and I know that like, oh, I want these kids to all be doing this independent activity and they're each doing it on their own, but there's like 6 sets and I put them maybe all on the rug, that might not be setting them up for success, right? Maybe if you have them spread apart, that could work, but really think about like not overcrowding students, giving them their own space. If it is a partner activity, have them have them be away from the kids that are working independently. Really use your classroom space as much as possible to set the kids up for success. Toward the beginning of the school year, there might be some things that I do ask them to work on independently, but they're typically very quick. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I have this I Can Work by Myself packet for kindergartners. And you can just pull sheets from it, and it's literally like the most basic stuff, like tracing lines, which helps with handwriting. There's like sequencing little pictures in order to practice cutting. So I will have at the beginning of the year some things that they're working on independently where it's just like everybody sits down and does whatever I want them to do, but I really try to make it for short chunks of time. And so that kind of leads me to my next tip. At the beginning of the school year, you might think, oh, I want centers to go on for 45 minutes. Well, they're probably not going to be ready to work independently for 45 minutes at the beginning of the year. So give them little tasks like what I have in this packet. The link for this is in the caption, by the way. And then as you're teaching them other different activities, then, you're increasing the amount of time that they work independently so that you eventually get to the point where they can, work for 45 minutes, and it's not going to happen immediately on their own. My last tip is to help your kids reflect on their growing independent work skills and celebrate your wins. At the beginning of the school year, if they sit and do something like in the first few weeks for 10 minutes and they're pretty independent with it, point that out, celebrate that with them, right? And so you want to set them up for success so that they can be successful. Make sure that they have access to all the supplies they need, anticipate any problems that they might encounter, and give them really simple activities like the ones that are in this packet. This is just like color coding letters. Give them simple activities that they can be successful with and really praise what they've done. Name specific things like, oh my gosh, you sat at your seat the entire time. When your pencil broke, you just got up and got a new one all by yourself. At the beginning of the year, I'm always losing my voice because I'm trying to name all of the good things that they're doing, again, so that we can eventually lead up to them working independently while I can pull small groups. And again, that is going to take time. Okay, I hope that this video was helpful. If you want to learn more about the kindergarten I Can Work More by Myself packets, there are so many resources in here for you to pull from. Honestly, it will last far beyond just the beginning of school too. Just a great resource to have on hand. And it's no prep, which is super nice. So I'll include a link for that in the caption. Again, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.